I'm going to say good morning because for me it's morning. When you watch and listen, it may not be morning for you. But today the thought that was on my mind is of one of my favorite phrases, and it's called perfect imperfections. All of my life I have been a perfectionist. I'm getting over it. I can't say that the idea of perfection does not plague me from time to time, and when it plagues me the most, I have this awareness, this feeling that I'm not quite good enough. I'm not quite acceptable to myself, to God, to others. I suppose it might be the root, or the root of it might be grounded in the religious training that I had as a child. For I remember the scripture from the Bible that says, "Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect." Well, I know that I'm not perfect. And because I believe that God is evolving, which may be blasphemy to some people, I don't believe God is so perfect either. Certainly not the God of the Bible who called for the murder of everybody when the children of Israel went out of Egypt and began to conquer the promised land, so to speak. And boy, that's still going on today, isn't it? Hasn't changed much in 5,000 years. But in any case, it was a terrible thing that God was having these people do from my consciousness today. I mean, how could God say, kill and don't let your eye pity or spare? But anyway, I'm diverting attention from my own issues, from my own perfect imperfections. As I said, most of my life I have felt not good enough because I had this idea of perfection, that there were certain rules that I had to keep if God was going to accept me. And of course, the big one for me has always been dealing with my sexuality and my sexual thoughts, and touching myself in places that I'm not supposed to touch, and feeling good about it and feeling bad because I was feeling good. In fact, once I wrote a poem, which I'll probably put on YouTube at some point in time, called My Favorite Sin, which starts with the words, "I was commanded by the Lord, and now I must begin to write a poetic expose about my favorite sin. For years I tried to hide it, was afraid to let it out. I suffered so from guilt, my faith was held in doubt." And I'm not going to even try to quote the whole thing because I've memorized the entirety of very few of my poems. In fact, I can't think of any that I've actually memorized the entire poem. So I usually have to end up reading them. But in any case, for me, I always had an excuse. There was always an excuse why I couldn't do what I felt I wanted to do and what I was supposed to do. There was always some reason why, as soon as this happens and I overcome this sin or I overcome this situation or problem, I mean, even in recent times, the big issue, even going into last year, well, I can't really start my ministry and doing what I'm supposed to be doing and really being the person that I'm supposed to be until I have my partner. I mean, all of my life, from early on in my life, I have envisioned myself helping people and sharing with people that uplifts and transforms people's lives. But my own life I couldn't even transform because I had to wait for this vision of this perfect partner to come into my life that was willing to share her life with me, and together we were going to be so powerful. We were going to be able to conquer worlds because of our great love for each other. And so I had this image of this perfect woman and this perfect relationship, and when God brings this into my life, then I'll finally be able to get it on and get it together and be able to do the things that I'm supposed to be doing and that I want to be doing. And I'll tell you something. She's not here yet. And I don't know, I'm not sure if she'll ever be here. Certainly not in the perfection that I that I have envisioned in my life. And so I made a decision actually late in 2010. I mean, Spirit told me, stop making excuses, just get on with it. And that's what I'm doing. That's why I'm doing these messages and these sharings that I'm doing each day. I'm not going to promise you that I'm going to be here every single day. And some days I might be here more than once. I don't know what the rules are because I don't have any rules. I'm going one step at a time, one day at a time. But I want to share with you, I just want you to get the idea that even after all of the years that I have spent on this spiritual path, sometimes it's still a struggle for me. Sometimes I still have days and moments. They're not really days anymore, I don't think. I mean, I haven't had one of those days in a while. But I have had days in recent months even that I was pretty down on myself, that I was pretty depressed. Because I expected myself to be over it, for God's sake. I mean, get over this thing of laying guilt trips on yourself from your religious training and your upbringing that you're supposed to somehow be different than what you are. So more and more, I'm able to come to that place in my life where I accept myself as I am. And you know, it's a funny thing. This is a workshop weekend for me, which workshops start on Friday night and they go all day Saturday, and you know, like 12 hours on Saturday and another 8 hours on Sunday. And they're long days. They're long days, and they're very intimate, and they're emotional healing workshops. They're powerful. I did my first workshop way back in January 1994. And I learned then, as I shared last night, one of the things you're supposed to say when you did your workshop and what was one thing you got out of it. One thing I got out of mine was that it was okay to use 4-letter words and it didn't make me any less spiritual. Yes, 4-letter words. Well, I was raised that cursing was the crutch of an intellectual cripple. I mean, I was just probably 12 years old, and my teacher, John Struss, my Sunday school teacher, John Struss, said that cursing is the crutch of an intellectual cripple. And I remember one time in the Army where they were doing tear gas training. And I used a 4-letter word that was around me all the time. I mean, I was in an environment of 4-letter words. And I couldn't get the latch on my case of my gas mask off, and I used a 4-letter word, adding 3 letters to it. You know, one of those fucking things? I mean, my God, and I just set it on camera for you all. But I learned in that workshop that it was okay to use 4-letter words. And it didn't make you an intellectual cripple. I learned a lot of things in my life, and I haven't learned them all, and I haven't mastered them all, because I still have perfect imperfections that enable me to love people where they are, better than I could when I was trying to put myself in the box of being perfect. What is perfection anyway? As I close and wrap this little sharing time up with you, perfection is loving what is. It's being able to accept yourself, your friends, your lovers, your family, exactly where they are. Loving them just because God is love. Just because that is really the fulfillment of all the law that has ever been laid down. The law wasn't given to make you perfect. The law was given to teach you about perfect imperfections that enable you to love as God does, unconditionally and from your heart and soul. There's no greater empowerment you'll ever give yourself than to learn to practice unconditional love. And again, it begins with the love that you give to yourself. For truly, you cannot rise above that in your own life. How you treat yourself is how you will ultimately treat others. So I leave that with you this morning to ponder. And again, God bless you and namaste.